As lake levels rise, so do mercury levels in Wisconsin fish. Madison, Wisconsin. It is mid-March. Scientist Carl Watra's snowshoes are rigged with rubber from bicycle tires to bind the webbed contraptions to his feet. His research assistant Watra's has been making this trek for 32 years. He studies how the non-profit news outlet Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism provided this article to the Associated Press through a collaboration with Institute for Nonprofit News. Watra's and Rubsum walk onto frozen Little Rock Lake in Vilas County near their base at the University of Wisconsin's Trout Lake Station. They are scientists. Rubsum walks briskly ahead with the sled toward the center of the lake. He pulls out a shovel. After decades of water sampling on Little Rock Lake and 2 other nearby lakes, Watra's has concluded that climate change is causing fluctuations in the level of dangerous methylmercury in the environment. The finding adds to the Watra's has discovered that accumulations of the toxin in fish fluctuate as water cycles driven by climate change raise and lower lake levels. When the water levels, he called the findings a we. This dynamic was previously seen in reservoirs, where levels tend to fluctuate. But Watra's said, the state DNR already recommends limiting intake of fish from most of the state's 15,000 lakes because of mercury. Nationwide, mercury concentrations in fish are above the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's human health limits in 1 out of every 4 streams, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And about half of all mercury can cause brain and kidney damage, especially in children, and it can be transmitted between mothers and babies, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the amount of mercury in the global atmosphere has doubled through human behavior since the pre-industrial era. Humans have added. Efforts to reduce mercury in the environment are hotly debated, as cutting emissions from power plants, the main source, can cost billions of dollars. The Trump administration gains made in controlling mercury through regulation may be obfuscated as the planet's climate continues to change, causing dips and spikes in the mercury levels of fish, making it harder to protect people and the planet. Noel Sullen, Associate Professor in Atmospheric Chemistry at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, said mercury regulations on power plants have largely worked. But going forward, if climate change is already mobilizing mercury in the environment, according to Sullen. Wildfires, Sullen said historical mercury emissions make up 2/3 of the accumulation in the environment, and new emissions account for 1/3. So, according Watra's, humans' exposure to the toxin will increasingly be like a roller. That may mean there is no longer a direct correlation between human efforts to reduce mercury in the environment and the amount of mercury that enters our food chain through fish. Mark Brigham, a hydrologist at the U.S. Geological Survey in Mounds View, Minnesota, said fluctuating mercury levels could make it harder to know whether fish are safe to eat. People who fish could. After finishing the sampling, Watra's walks over to a group of trees on the edge of the lake. These were once on white. In years when water levels are low, the forest marches. In late April, a group of protesters lined up to speak at a Sierra Club news conference in Milwaukee against a proposal to change mercury limits for We Energy's coal-burning Oak Creek plant. The utility is seeking a variance from DNR's recently applied mercury limits. Rather than being helped, the limits proposed by DNR are meant to prevent a future increase of mercury discharge and are based on what the plant typically discharges, said Jason Knutson, DNR Wastewater Section Chief. The proposal has raised fears among environmental advocates that mercury output from the plant will increase. The news conference was held right before the Milwaukee County Board voted unanimously in favor of a resolution asking DNR to deny the company's variance request. We Energy's spokesman Brendan Conway said the company is committed to decreasing its mercury emissions. Conway said they're even. Knudsen noted that other utilities on Lake Michigan have variances with higher concentrations of mercury discharge. Regulations and other changes over the decades have reduced mercury in Wisconsin's environment. They include eliminating the use of mercury in commercial products, closing a smelter near the state's northern border, and cutting mercury emissions from area utilities, according to WATRA's study, which was co-authored by 3 other DNR officials: David Grande, an air toxics chemist, Alexander Latt, adding climate change to the mix will make it harder to sustain those gains. We search for location/city.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.